Hello and welcome. So this build is a Warden Tank Build that is kind of designed for most content. It is not designed for optimized trials, but it could definitely still be used in trial content. The idea of this build is mainly to create a situation where you're able to do a lot of AoE debuffs, and you can do tanking, and you can still output some decent damage as well, especially in AoE situations. Now this build is a lot of fun to play, and it's going to be using double frost staves. The build will focus on a range of different area of effects. It's going to create frost, it's going to create fire, it's going to create a lot of different damage situations. It's going to improve your group's DPS. It is a build that is designed for helping groups to increase their damage. So the class we decided to use for this build is obviously a Warden, and the reason for that is they're able to provide a number of good utilities towards this build. So they're able to create frost damage, they're able to provide group buffs, they're able to gain stamina while blocking and while using double frost staves, and they're able to do a good range of chaining and pulling, rooting, and pretty much everything that we could possibly need for tanking. The race for this build is a Imperial. The Imperial are very strong for the Flames of Ambition patch. Obviously we've got the max health, very important for tanking. The max stamina, which is going to be pretty important as well, because we are going to be blocking with stamina for this build, and we're not going to be using any stamina skills. So we are relying on having a high stam pool to maintain our blocking and not have to worry about anything in terms of stamina sustain. We're also using the red diamond passive, which is going to reduce the cost of all of our abilities by 6%. This also includes blocking, dodge rolling, break free, everything like that as well. So the Imperial is a very strong option for all tank builds this patch. For our attributes, I have gone with 7 Magicka, 42 into health, 15 into stamina, and that gives a real nice spread of resources. So just have a quick look at our stat sheet. If we fully buff up with all of our buffs and stuff, have a look at our stat sheet. We're sitting on some pretty strong stuff here. So 25k Magicka, we're on 27k health, and nearly 32k max stamina. Mag recovery is 2,300, and our resistance is there 28k for each one. This is fully buffed with the Warhorn buff, our potion, and all that kind of stuff. So that is what we would get kind of in group content. This is the kind of level we'd be buffed up to when we're inside a group. For the food, we're just using any tri-stat food. Bewitched Sugar Skulls obviously is the best to use for this particular situation, but you could use any kind of purple food as well, or any food that you've got spare. The potions, we're using any tri-stat potion that you might have, so even the Crown Restoration potions, any of those. We want to be able to get our health, our magicka, and our stamina back, and the 3 recoveries to go alongside them as well. So any kind of tri-stat potion is great for this, that gives all of the 3 resources and all 3 recoveries as well. For our Mundus Stone, we're gone with the Atronach. We are using a lot of magicka based skills for this build, so the Atronach is the best one we can go with. So onto the gear that we're going to be using for this. So we have got, first of all, we are going to be using the Frozen Watcher set. Now the reason why we are using this set is it's a fantastic set for maintaining the chilled effect, for maintaining minor brittle, and it's effortless in doing so as well. And the reason that it's so good is because it's an area of effect. So everything that is stood near to you will get minor brittle, will get the chilled effect, will be debuffed so that your damage dealers can increase their damage that they're doing to that enemy, and those enemies also get debuffed with AoE minor maim. So let's have a look. So the 2 item bonus is maximum stamina, we're getting maximum health on the 3, 4 pieces maximum stamina again, and then for the 5 piece, summon a blizzard around you while blocking, inflicting 1,528 frost damage every 1 second to enemies within 6 meters. Your blizzard has a 15% chance of inflicting the chill effect on the enemies damaged. So for the front bar weapon, we are going to be using a charged weapon with a frost enchant. On the back bar, we're also using another Frozen Watcher Eye Staff. This time we're using an infused crusher. So Potentially you would want to use an infused frost glyph on your back bar, because we're using so many ice abilities to go alongside Frozen Watcher. We don't really need the frost glyph to proc to get the chilled effect, so we're doing okay without it. So we're not going to use it on this occasion, but on other builds you might do that. So you'd use an infused frost glyph on the front bar, and then maybe a charged weapon and something else on the front bar, whatever you fancy, and that would be a good way to maintain brittle. But with this particular setup, we don't need the frost glyph on the back bar to be proccing, because we've got the charged effect and lots of frost damage, so it's not necessary. The next set we're using is the Encratis' Behemoth set, and we're using this wonderful set to proc the increased flame damage. So the one piece we get extra magicka, and then for the two piece we get dealing flame damage on an enemy grants you the Behemoth's aura for 12 seconds that reaches up to 12 meters. You and up to 11 group members in the aura reduce flame damage taken by 5%. Enemies in the aura increase their flame damage taken by 5%, and this effect can occur once every 15 seconds. So we're going to be buffing our group, and we're going to be debuffing the enemy with fire damage, basically. So our group is going to do more fire damage to the enemy, like all the enemies inside the aura when it procs, and we're going to take reduced fire damage when we're wearing it and it procs as well. So a very nice buff set for magicka groups, and fits in with the theme that we're going with, which is kind of ice and fire on this build. The next set we're going to be using is Defiled Dragon, and the reason why we use this is for the 5-piece, because we are not using a one-handed shield, so we are missing Minor Breach. So let's just have a look. So for the 2-piece, we're getting the max stamina, getting max stamina on the 3-piece, the 4-piece is max health, 5-piece is max health as well, and when you take damage from a melee attack, you gain a corrupting aura for 5 seconds that applies Minor Breach to all enemies near you, reducing their physical and spell resistance by almost 3k. This effect can occur every 5 seconds, so basically 100% uptime. This is going to proc along with Frozen Watcher and Encratis all at the same time. So we're going to get all 3 things active at the same time. So this is creating a huge amount of debuffing on enemies as an area of an effect. So this is a better build for dealing with area of effect situations and for dungeon situations where there's lots of enemies. In single target trial fights, for example, this wouldn't be as effective, but could still be used where there's like a trial situation with more than one enemy. But if you're really optimizing trials, you probably wouldn't use this particular build. But if you're progressing trials and you're in a progressive group, this is going to be a good way to maintain these 3 things on all enemies. So again, we've got the Encratis Behemoth Shoulder, and then we've got the Defiled Dragon and all the body pieces. All of the body pieces are in Sturdy, they're in Heavy, they are with Tri-Stat enchants, every single piece, and that's how we get the mega stats that we've got. On the jewelry, we're using 3 Triune, Frozen Watcher again, and all Magicka Recovery. So that is basically it for the gear. Okay, so onto the skills, and we need to use a taunt. So obviously we're going to use Inner Rage, and this is our taunt, and our only taunt really. It's a ranged taunt usually, but it's a Magicka taunt, and that's quite important. It's a Magicka taunt. We don't have the option of a melee taunt because we're not using a sword and board, we're using a Frost Staff. We're using double Frost Staff, so we can't really make use of Pierce Armor. So we are using this instead. Now, we're using Razor Caltrops for 2 reasons. Because this is an AoE debuff build, Razor Caltrops is a huge skill that creates a huge debuff over a big area and will cause major breach to everything stood inside of it. But it also snares things as well, which is really helpful for our crowd control. So because we don't have a kind of standard Pierce Armor taunt, we've got Minor Breach from Defiled Dragon that we're using, and then we're going to use Caltrops, Razor Caltrops for the major breach. So we're still getting all the same benefits, but it is obviously taking a gear set and an extra skill to do so. But the idea is to create an area of effect debuff build. So when we place this down, absolutely huge area. So everything that stood inside this will get affected by major breach. The next skill we're using is Scalding Rune. The reason we're using this skill is for our Encratis' Behemoth set. So we're just going to place this on the enemy. It's going to do some fire damage. It's going to do fire damage over time, and it's going to proc our Encratis' Behemoth on cooldown. Every time the monster set has finished its cooldown, it will reproc automatically as long as you've got Scalding Rune on the ground. So this is going to maintain it at a maximum uptime that you can get from in Kratos Behemoth, and it's going to create a bit of damage for us as well. Next we've got Polar Wind. Now Polar Wind is our nice big heal. It's going to give us a massive heal because it's based off max health. It is a tank heal. It's going to give us a 12k heal and then an additional 1.4k heal every 1 second over 5 seconds. It's also going to heal somebody else within 12 meters of us, and it's also going to do frost damage every second. It's going to help us with that brittle uptime as well, which is fantastic. It's another bit of frost damage to go with the other frost damage that we're going to be doing, which is really, really nice. Fetcher Infection, this is kind of a flex spot. This is a skill that ideally you want to be using, but if there's a particular thing that you're struggling with while using this build, you can switch this skill out for something else. This is another enemy debuff that's going to improve your group's DPS. So it causes minor vulnerability to the enemy, increasing the damage they take by 5%. So it's definitely a good skill that you want to use if you can. And it's going to help your group's DPS. Everything that we're doing so far is just increasing DPS. This is a single target skill though, so you will have to apply it to multiple enemies, which can become quite expensive at a cost of nearly 3k magicka. So you do have to be careful. It's more important for boss fights, but you could definitely cast it on some enemies in ad pulls as well if you get the chance to. For our front bar ultimate, we're using Barrier, and this is just for the magicka recovery. So we're using this. It's just for the magicka recovery. So we're using it to get the benefit of the magicka aid passive, increasing our magicka recovery by 10%. Because all of our abilities are magicka, apart from the caltrops and blocking, we do need high magicka recovery to support all the casting of skills that we are going to be doing. So that is pretty important. You do want to have that on your front bar. Next we're going to be using Winter's Revenge. Now this skill is going to help us to keep up our brittle uptime and our chilled effect uptime. We're going to cast this on enemies. You could use the other morph as well if you want some slightly better crowd control. So you could use Gripping Shards as well. So either morph is fine. This one, you can throw it at the enemy. Whereas Gripping Shards will just happen right close to your character. So whichever morph you prefer, you could choose that. It's not really going to make that much difference, but you want to have one or the other, and that's going to help you with your minor brittle. Next we've got Frozen Device. This is a kind of flex spot, so obviously you don't need this for boss fights, but for ad pulls, this is your chaining ability. This is your portal ability. It's going to pull enemies to you, so you're going to cast this. It's going to create frost damage as well. It's going to cause major maims at enemies that are chained. It's going to pull them towards you. It's going to immobilize them. So it's a very good skill with lots of different effects. And it's pretty good as well because you can place 3 at a time. So you can throw 3 of them out in different directions, lay them on the ground. Things will just get ported straight to you as soon as they stand inside the frozen device. If you don't like the speed or anything like that, you could switch this out for Silver Leash, but you are going to struggle to sustain Silver Leash because we have got no sword and board. We can't heavy attack to get resources back, so it is going to be a little bit of a struggle if we are having to use Silver Leash. So this is definitely the better skill to use, and this is going to be the way that you're going to pull the enemies towards you. And you want enemies to be very close as well, because we're going to be doing a lot of ground and area effects that are going to debuff enemies. Blockade of Frost is next, and this is going to give us a couple of things. We're going to get so it's an immobilization. We are going to chill the enemies very, very frequently, so this is going to be quite useful in terms of crowd control. It's also going to proc our enchant, so because we're putting down this on the ground, it's going to be proccing our Crusher enchant, especially for boss fights and things like that. It's also going to be another thing that causes frost damage. So it causes frost damage, and it's helping to keep that shield effect and brittle uptime. It's also going to give us a damage shield of nearly 12k, which is fantastic for dealing with projectiles. So it's got lots and lots of different features and functions for us, and that is the reason why we're going to be using it. Next we've got Expansive Frostclog. So we've got another group buff. Now this is going to give everybody major resolve. Everybody within 28 meters is going to get major resolve. You could use balance if you don't need this. So this is the group buff. If you want to play more selfish but with better sustain, then you would use balance instead from the major skill. But this is going to be better for helping your group and helping survival and giving everybody that major resolve. And it's nearly 6k resistances, so definitely worth it if you can. Our next skill is the Bullnetch. This is going to generate stamina every second, and it's going to also be a little purge as well. So when we get negative effects applied to us, this will purge those away from us. It's going to restore stamina to us over 25 seconds. So this is how we're going to sustain running a double frost build, is by using the netch, keeping that active at all times. We also, by using that netch, get more recovery. We get more recovery, stamina and magic recovery by 12% by having this slotted. So very helpful, and we've got to have it slotted. Final skill is the aggressive horn. We need this ourselves for the max stats, the max stamina, the max magicka. That is really helpful to have both of those. But it's also going to give our group the major force, increasing their crit damage. So pretty much everything that we're doing here is increasing group damage. We're giving our group major force, we're giving our group major resolve, we're giving our group crusher from the blockade of frost, we're giving our group the chilled effects on minor maim and minor brittle from the winter's revenge. We're going to be proccing in Crisis Behemoth from Scalding Rune. We're going to be doing major breach by using razor caltrops, and then we're going to be doing minor vulnerability by using Fetcher Infection. And we're also going to be able to heal our allies as well with a huge heal. So everything we're doing pretty much is benefiting group situations. So this is going to be great. Dungeons, arenas, normal trials, ad pulls in vet trials and DLC vet trials, even in some boss fights depending on the experience level of your group. This isn't for like a really top tier optimized group, but like I say, a mid-range trial group might find some real use from having these extra benefits within their group. You're providing a lot of stuff, and there's even more as well. So we've got the passive skills, we've got more things that we're going to benefit our group with as well. The maturation passive, which gives minor toughness, that is there as well. We are going to give that to group members when we heal them, when we use Polar Wind. If you wanted to, you could slot Budding Seed. You could place that somewhere on your bar as well, and that would proc the maturation passive for your whole group. So you'd place this on a group. Let's say you're in a boss fight on a trial, so you don't need Frozen Device, so you put Budding Seed on instead. When you put Budding Seed on the ground, everybody stood inside of it is going to get the maturation proc. It's going to proc the maturation passive and give them the minor toughness. So everyone's going to benefit from that. So for the passive skills, anytime your animal companion skill ends, you gain a heal, so you want to take that. Ultimate gaining, we always want to have more ultimate, so Savage Beast is a must-have. We've got the Flourish passive, which is magic and stamina recovery, so we definitely need that. Increased damage, not necessary, but you can take it if you want. Green balance passives, obviously you might as well take them all, but there's only a certain few that really make a difference. So the maturation passive here is the most important one. The other ones are okay, but not really that vital. When you heal an ally, we're not going to be using any green balance abilities unless you slot Budding Seed. These other passives aren't really necessary. So you only get the benefit from the other ones by slotting Budding Seed, so that is kind of up to you if you're going to use that or not. Winter's Embrace, so you're going to be taking most of these. Increased chance of applying the chilled effect to enemies. We definitely want to use Glacial Presence. Frozen Armor, might as well use it because it's going to give us more resistances. Icy Aura, reduces the effectiveness of snares, definitely worth having. And increased magic and frost damage. We're already doing frost damage, you might as well take it and get the extra benefit from the extra damage. For the Destruction Staff, you don't want to take the Trifocus passive. We don't want to block with Magicka in this situation. It's going to be too intense because we're using too many high-costing Magicka abilities. We won't be able to sustain dealing with those Magicka situations and blocking with Magicka as well. So we're not blocking with Magicka, we're blocking with Stamina, and we're dealing with that by using the Bull Netch skill. We want to take all the rest of them, so we want to have, we definitely want to have Elemental Force to increase our chance to apply elemental stats effects. Ancient Knowledge we need because when equipping an Ice Staff, it reduces your cost of blocking and increases the amount of damage you can block by 20%. So it's almost the same as having a Sword and Shield. Definitely worth picking up Ancient Knowledge. And then Destruction Expert is going to give us 1,800 Magicka back when we use a shield, a damage shield from the Destruction Staff, like one of the Destruction Staff abilities, which we are going to do with our Blockade. So definitely worth having this one, because we're going to get that Magicka back when we cast Blockade sometimes. You don't need to take any of the armor passives apart from Heavy Armor. Heavy Armor is the only armor that we're using, so we just take all the passives from those, and we benefit from all the added sustain and benefits that we've got there. So we get the increased resistances, we get the stamina and Magicka incoming every 4 seconds. This is really helpful for sustaining the 757 stamina and Magicka every 4 seconds when we take damage. So that's going to be a valuable tool for sustaining while we're blocking. Juggernaut passive increased our max health by 14%. Then we've got increased Magicka, basically, because we're not got a sword on board, so we're not going to be able to get the stamina back. But we will be able to get Magicka back if we are to heavy attack with our Frost Staff, and we're going to get that. And then Rapid Mending increased healing received. Undaunted passives, you want to take those. You'll get an extra 2% of your resources, and we want to get the Undaunted command so we can benefit from getting some resources back when we use synergies. As we mentioned already, we just need to get Magicka Aid from the support skill line, and that is going to benefit us with the additional Magicka recovery from slotting Barrier on the front bar. Obviously you want to take all your racial passives from the Imperial, and finally you want to take the medicinal use passive from Alchemy. Okay, champion points now. The most important ones, obviously we want to max out our mitigation and all of our max Magicka, max stamina, all those kinds of things, our crit, blessed, all those kinds of things. The important ones that we need to make sure we've got here, we need to make sure we've got Bulwark to increase our resistances while we have a Frost Staff equipped. So that's kind of the important one to have here. So the main one we want to pick up here is Flawless Ritual. Increases your chance to apply a magical stats effect, and it's going to be by 60%. In terms of the red champion points, we just want to slot everything that's going to help us here. So max health, balanced vitality, Ironclad for the extra resistances, rejuvenation for the recovery. You've got a choice here. You can either go with expert evasion. You've got to remember that if you do ever need to dodge roll, having a free dodge roll every 30 seconds is going to be very helpful, because we are using double Frost Staff, so we're not going to be able to heavy attack with a sword and board to gain resources back. So by having that free one every 30 seconds, that's going to stop us from losing too much stamina if we do need to dodge roll. If you don't want to take that one and you're in a situation where you might need to break free more often, then we can use Slippery instead, which is going to let us break free at no cost. And that could be helpful depending on what situation you're in. So you want to choose between one of those two really, and take one of those to benefit from the break free or the free dodge roll. You want to make sure you've got Fortification. That's really important for our increased block mitigation. But in terms of the red CP, they are the most important ones. We just want to get as much reduced cost as possible. Reduced cost of block, reduced cost of bash, reduced cost sprinting, whatever it is, reduced cost of dodge roll and break free as well. So make sure you pick up all of the reduced cost ones that you can. They're all going to be pretty important. Okay guys, so I'm going to show you how this build works in an AoE situation. We're going to get lots and lots of proccing of our gear sets. Lots and lots of things are going to activate, so this is going to be really, really nice. So let's check it out. Right guys, so I'm going to quickly demonstrate now how to play this build in AoE situations, in ad pull situations. And the general kind of idea is we go into an ad pull, we start off with our caltrops, we put down our Scalding Rune, and then we block in every other skill we do. So you want to be casting a skill, light attack, block. Cast a skill, light attack, block. Cast a skill, light attack, block. That is pretty much the rotation of how you do this on this character. You want to keep everything on the ground as much as possible. All of your AoEs, so you want to keep caltrops down, Scalding Rune down, you want to keep Winter's Revenge down, you want to keep your blockade down, and then you want to keep all your other things active as well. So everything just needs to be active, and you need to be block, light attacking, light attack weaving and blocking in between if you can. Here we are, guys, in a single target kind of boss fight situation. I've switched off Frozen Device because obviously we're not going to use it in a boss fight unless there's ads. But we're kind of just doing the same kind of thing. We're just going to maintain all of our different skills and our buffs and debuffs on the enemy. So that's a single target fight, and as you can see there, we've got some really, really nice uptimes for that single target fight. We've done 8k DPS, which isn't bad considering we're in an AoE setup, but we're able to hit some massive uptimes. We've got nearly 100% on Crusher, Brittle, Major and Minor Breach. We've got our Scalding Rune down for a good period of time. Behemoths was proccing. We've got the Minor Vulnerability, we've got the Magic of Steel, we've got the Burning effects. Lots and lots of good group-based debuffs. We've got some good buffs in there. All really, really solid. So this particular setup would be, like I've said already, you could use it in trial content, but if you did want to optimize for trial content, you could switch out the Defiled Dragon set for Yolnahkrin. You could also run a Double Frost setup using Elemental Catalyst as well. So this kind of setup would work well with Elemental Catalyst. The only thing you would need to switch is you'd need to switch the back bar enchant. On your Infused Crusher, you'd change that to Infused Shock instead. And with the current skills and setup we've already got, we would have enough already to maintain Elemental Catalyst. So if you wanted to switch this up into a trial build, you'd keep the same traits, the same enchants, the same setup on the staffs and the jewelry. You'd just switch to Yolnahkrin, Elemental Catalyst, you'd keep in Kratis, and the same skill setup would also work as well. So that is how you would kind of optimize this for a trial. So I hope you've enjoyed this Warden Tank build, Frostburn. If you've got any questions, you can let me know in the comments below, or you can ask me on the Tank Club on Discord. The written version for this build will be on the Tank Club website as well, so make sure you check that out if you want to see the written information. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.